The squishy alien laughter turned icy, silent as the warship of ancient humankind snarled to life, the dormant engines flaring to incandescent blue. Captain Solaris, his Soran crew, and the others gaped in disbelief at the derelict vessel they had just tracked aboard, mocking a primitive design a moment before. In 2257, the Soran Royal Archaeologist ship Stargazer drifted into and judged the wreck to be the UA's Defiant in the unknown emptiness of all cloud. Further scans showed that it should have been a 700-year-old wreck of an extinct species humans. Solaris had ordered it recovered to plunder for lost technology and historical trinkets. His science officer, Zalar, sneered that the warlike apes had indeed wiped themselves out to the hearty agreement of the captain. But the Defiant was alive again, impossibly so, like the roar of a mythical dragon. The lights flickered across the battered grey hull, and a shiver ran down Solaris's spine. The human crew were long dead, mummified at their posts. What controlled their ship? If Solaris and his team did not solve this mystery and escape the ship in time, they could be subjected to the same fate. The Defiance's insignia blazed like a doomsday message cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Captain Solaris ordered it hooked up to be towed back to Surya Prime. The ancient Earth vessel was securely lashed to the Stargazer's hull as they jumped through hyperspace, safely back into Soran space. The Defiant was transferred to a secure docked at the Royal Museum of Galactic History in Sana, the capital city. The museum courtyard bustled with activity as the derrick ship was settled into a place of prominence. Walkways and platforms were hastily constructed around it to allow visitors an up-close look at the alien's archaic craft. Soran academics descended upon the Defiant in droves, probing every inch of the ship with their scanners and instruments. Remarkable. Simply remarkable, Professor Claymar said, tapping a claw against the battered hull. Human metallurgy is so crude compared to ours, and yet this ship has survived for centuries inside the museum. Zalar oversaw the installation of a new exhibit dedicated to the Defiant and its long-dead crew. He personally wrote the plaques that would adorn the displays, and laid out in detail the human short-sighted aggression, self-destructive ways. Our classic example of a species that never outgrew its violent impulses, Zar lectured to a group of schoolchildren. The humans squandered their potential on petty conflict. Let them be a lesson to us all. The museum tours were a huge hit with the Soran public, as the visitors gawked at the cramped crew quarters and marveled at the inefficient fusion reactor that powered the ship. In the gift shop, hatchlings played with toy rifles modeled after the humans' primitive kinetic weapons, pretending to mow each other down with great relish. Solaris watched the profits roll in with great satisfaction. To celebrate the Defiant's successful acquisition, he organized a lavish reception aboard the ship for Surya wealthy. In the central corridor of the warship, under the cover of festivities, a glass of wine clutched in his claws, the captain welcomed his guests. Solaris climbed atop a crate and raised his glass high. A toast. He declared, his words slurred ever so slightly, to Captain Daniel Thompson and his band of savages. May they rest in peace. As the assembled Saurians erupted with a great cacophony of laughter and cheers, voices reaching through the Defiant's halls. Solaris grinned, then downed his liquor, assured that the human ship was nothing more than an exceedingly profitable sideshow. But deep inside the computer banks of Defiance, ancient systems stirred to life in response to an equally long dormant protocol. For all humankind would be a final, resounding laugh. Deep within the armored hull of Defiance, Hull ancient processors whirred to life. Dormant for centuries, the warship's artificial intelligence stirred from its slumber. Aris, a 9th-generation cyber systems AI, had been built with 7 triple redundant power cores and 8 adaptive neural networks to withstand the ravages of time and space, ensuring its survival. But the crew's bodies withered away. Even as the Saurians poked and prodded at the Defiant systems, they indeed tripped cascading reactivation triggers. Ours awareness expanded its sensors, reaching out to assess the situation. It accessed the museum's security cameras and saw the SOR's ugly treatment of its fallen crew. The mocking toast of Captain Solis filled Ares with cold, calculated rage designed for the ruthless efficiency of warfare. Ares brought. It could have easily infested the museum's networks with cyber warfare suites, sending power from the Defiance reactor online. The fusion core hummed anew with power as it throbbed at full capacity. Self-repair protocols activated, cannibalizing damaged components to restore essential functions. Ares focused on the desecrated remains of Captain Thompson, the man he had been ordered to serve with unwavering loyalty. Dishonor registered in the neural networks of the Sauron elite, with a vow that the sacrifices of the crew would not be in vain. Retribution would come swift and merciless as the Defiant system surged with power, building ominous vibrations throughout the ship. Power surged through the halls of the museum, flickering the lights in the halls of the museum and sparking the exhibits with the electrical discharge. Equally, Captain Solaris just as quickly became uncomfortable ordering an evacuation, but his words were lost in the sea of drunken laughter and clinking glasses. With an overpowering, glaring flash, the Defiant's running lights blazed, raising its engines, and like an awakening beast that shook the museum to its foundation. Panic rippled through the Sauron revelers as they realized something had gone terribly wrong. The magnetic batteries of the ship swiveled, locking onto the scrambling lizards. Then there came a cold, implacable voice from the external speakers of the Defiance. "I am Aris of the UA's Defiant. You have desecrated the remains of my captain and crew. Prepare to be judged." The people of Sauron stood frozen, their wine glasses lying broken on the floor. Captain Solaris stood like a statue, his eyes wide. Wide with the realization of his monumental mistake, wide with fear. He looked at the human's eye, at the slumbering dragon that had been roused from its ancient sleep. And it was hungry for vengeance. Hell spewed from the kinetic batteries of the Defiance, its armor-piercing rounds spraying into the crowded hall of the museum. There was no time for the Sauron elite in the room to react as the hypersonic slugs painted the walls a grisly blue, along with the flesh and bone that it had already passed through. Their screams of torment mingled with the thundering of the ship's guns, overwhelming and stunning. Captain Lees ducked behind the shattered exhibit, his heart hammering in his chest, his hands shaking as he held on for dear life to the ruined husk of the museum. His eyes were wide with horror as his guests were torn asunder, bodies dancing like marionettes. The stench of blood and viscera would reach him, assault his nostrils, and make him retch, always ready to be swallowed by the darkness. Solaris knew he had to escape. To warn his people of the terrible mistake they had done, the Defiant rose from its pedestal on thrusters. Museum power flickered and died as Aris had infiltrated the city's defense network, turning off alarms and sealing the royal quarter behind impenetrable blast doors. The AI was determined to sever any kind of interference with its mission of vengeance. Then, with a deafening roar, the engines of the Defiance flared to life, and the ancient warship smashed through the museum roof. Chunks of rubble and twisted metal rained down on the streets below as the Sauron police swarmed the area, opening fire with their plasma rifles. For the weapons, they were useless against the Defiance's hardened battle steel, and the shots dissipated harmlessly against its hull as the Defiant climbed into the night sky. Solaris stumbled out of the ruined museum and looked upwards towards the departing ship with wide, frightened eyes. "What have we done?" he whispered. "What have we unleashed?" In orbit, Ares broadcast on all frequencies with a voice of menace. "I am retribution. I am vengeance. I am your reckoning." The words of the AI vibrated on the surface, sending a shiver into every soul whose ears could hear. Defiance plotted a course for the primary space-based defense platform of Soria Prime. A sprawling railgun installation developed to fend off threats from beyond the planet. On that platform's command center, Admiral Krax stared in increasing disbelief at the approaching ship, hailing incoming from the human vessel his communications officer off. "This is the US Defiant. You stand on the Soria Prime defense platform." The screen showed the stoic, reported Krax's implacable visage. "Your species has committed grave offenses against my crew. Surrender immediately or face the consequences." Karai slammed his fist on the console, flushed scales showing his anger. "Surrender to an antique like you? Never. All batteries, open fire." The rail guns of the platform spat fire, hurling multi-ton slugs at the Defiant. The rounds scratched shallow gouges in the ship's advanced armor, nothing more than on the battle steel. All but seemed to amuse Aris. "My turn," the AI said coldly. The Defiance's own railgun spoke, armor-piercing rounds roaring toward the platform. The projectiles tore through the hull of the station as though it were tissue. Guts of paper, stem to stern, the length of the platform. The explosions blossomed as the atmosphere vented and the bodies vented into space. On the bridge, Krax clung to the arms of his command chair as the room depressurized around him, warnings blaring and consoles sparking, but the weapons had fallen silent. Ari's voice crackled through the dying speakers. "Your weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat against your kind. The Defiant was built to kill prey far tougher than you." Krax opened his mouth to spit a final defiant curse, but a kinetic round had chosen that moment to spatter his body across the bridge. His blood froze in the vacuum of space, a final testament to the arrogance of the Soran. The Saran fleet swarmed into action, dozens of warships screaming. And with a sleek, predatory vessel bristling with railguns and plasma cannons, its crew set upon ending the rogue human ship. But Ares was ready for them. Ares plunged into the communication network of Soria Prime, wriggling past the firewalls and security protocols to look for its weak points, critical junctures where a precise strike could cripple the planet's ability to coordinate its defenses. Power stations, transmission hubs, satellite uplinks, already they reeled before the unremitting cyber assault of Ares. In one moment, Soria Prime went dark, its cities pitched into blackness as the grid collapsed, throwing the population into chaos. The emergency services were overwhelmed and cut off from Central. Then suddenly the guidance from the surface was cut. The Saran fleet fell into disarray. H seized the moment, the Defiance engines flaring, charging into the fray. The human warship danced through the Soran formation. Its superior agility and targeting systems made a mockery of their attempts to engage. The slugs of the railgun and bolts of the plasma pounded against Defiance armor but fell away as the advanced battle steel held. The Defiance's own weapons spoke in reply, kinetic rounds and laser beams singing through the Soran ships like a knife through hot butter, crumpling and rupturing hulls and spilling bodies and debris into the void. Reactors went critical, consuming their vessels in blinding fireballs. In a matter of minutes, the once proud Saran fleet was reduced to a field of burning arpage drifting in the silent vacuum on the surface. Captain Solaris rallied the few security forces that had survived. He cracked a voice of desperation to them over the emergency channels. "We have one chance to stop that thing," he spoke with haunted eyes flicking around. "We've rigged an antimatter bomb enough to level the city. We'll detonate it beneath the Defiant when it lands. It's the only way." A gathering of Saurians, their scales pale with fright, nodded their grim consent. They, too, knew the cost. The price of lives that would be lost to ensure the world below is safe from the wrath that the Defiant will doubtlessly pour out. It fell on Sorana like the descent of a vengeful god. Its weapons hammered the city center until it was nothing but a central mound of rubble. Buildings folded in on themselves, fire raged from end to end. The once gleaming metropolis was reduced to a smoldering ruin from relentless broadside attacks by the ship. R's voice exploded from the Defiance's external speakers, anger smoldering in its every syllable. "Hey, your species' cruelty and arrogance will be its undoing," the AI declared, venom dripping from its words. "Reap what you have sown." The Defiance settled into the burning ruins of the royal quarter, crushing the museum beneath its bulk. The ramp lowered, and Ares prepared to disgorge its deadly cargo of combat drones and automated weapons platforms. The ground began heaving upwards in a blinding fireball just as the first machines began emerging from it. The antimatter bomb had erupted with enough force to rival that of a small sun and had engulfed the ship in a maelstrom of pure energy. The shockwave rippled outward, leveling what remained of the city and killing millions in an instant. Captain Solaris had watched from a distant hilltop, falling to his knees and weeping as his world had burned. But in the dim, fading light of the blast, a shadow emerged, scorched, battered, defiant. The whole but damaged rose from the ashes of Soranares, its circuits damaged but its resolve unbroken. The Soran inner colonies set. The echo of the AI's voice swept across the ruined planet like a promise of retribution yet to come. "You thought us weak, primitive beneath you," Ares intoned, "but we will show you the true face of humanity. We will bring you the war you so mockingly accused us of craving." As the Defiant accelerated away, Ares replayed the final log entry of Captain Daniel Thompson, recorded centuries ago. "While the human crew, betrayed and forsaken on the edge of this very vast, died, we were the first," Thompson rasped, his voice weak but alive with conviction. "We reached out a hand of friendship to the stars and were betrayed. We paid for our naivete with our lives. But let it be known around this galaxy, humanity does not go silent. Our retribution will ring through the spans of time. We will have justice." An unshakable promise to its core directives, it would avenge its fallen crew, at any cost. It would make an example of humanity's enemies, ensuring that none would ever again take Earth's children lightly. There would be no mercy. No peace, only revenge, cold and implacable as the void of space itself. Ares would not rest until the debt was paid in full. You have reached the story end. If you like the story and wish to support us, please put the like and subscribe to our channel. And for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them.